Welcome, everyone. This is the live virtual roundtable event where we'll discuss AI in the workplace. I'm your moderator, Douglas Brown, CEO at Halo Consulting, a certified minority-owned search firm based in Chicago. Halo was founded in April of 2020 to provide the process-oriented best practices our team developed at top executive search firms with a risk-free, cost-effective fee model tailored for early-stage and high-growth startups for their most critical hires. If you're new to this event, Halo hosts monthly virtual roundtable events like this one for HR, tech, and DEI leaders on a variety of topics. Don't forget to check out the Halo series where we hear from executives taking a deep dive into what is keeping them up at night. And don't forget to subscribe to our monthly newsletter, the Halo Content Hub, which summarizes current market trends and recaps past events. This event is being recorded, and feel free to drop any questions into the Q&A function, and we'll address those questions throughout the session. Early next week, we will be sharing a survey to gather your feedback, and we will post a recorded version of this event to our YouTube channel early next week. Today, we are joined by a phenomenal group of HR executives. We do want this to be an interactive session, so please ask questions using the Q&A function. First, I'd like to introduce Oren Eden. Oren has over 25 years of experience in the HR and operations space. This includes roles with government agencies, large multinationals, boutique firms, and his fifth startup, Silent8. As an economist, he is in love with the power of data and robust analytics. His graduate work in healthcare economics focused on building organizational systems that promote well-being while minimizing costs. He's also in his last year of law school. He doesn't want to be an attorney. He just felt that having a deep understanding of the legal system and its dynamics would put him in an even better position to mitigate risk within an organization. In his free time, of which there is very little these days, he enjoys binge watching paranormal teen fiction on Netflix and working in his fruit orchard. Great to have you on the panel, Oren. Next, I'd like to introduce Heather Oxley. Heather is the Chief People Officer at Global Logic, a leading digital engineering services company with nearly 30,000 professionals across 18 countries. She leads the global human resources function and drives the talent strategy and organizational design for the company. She is a certified human capital strategist and an organization design fellow with over 2 decades of experience in the field of HR and talent development. Heather has a proven track record of designing and implementing large-scale talent programs that enhance the capabilities and performance of diverse and multicultural teams. She won the Corp U Award for Learning Excellence and Innovation for creating an English program for over 150,000 plus employees at Accenture, where she spent 20 plus years in consulting, delivery, and internal HR roles. She has also supported social impact projects with the United Nations Development Program in South Africa and Brazil. Heather is passionate about mentoring and coaching female executives and fostering a culture of inclusion and empowerment at Global Logic. She's an avid traveler, hiker, and animal lover who has visited 52 countries and all 7 continents. Interested in hearing your perspective today, Heather.
Thank you.
Our next panelist I'd like to introduce is Anthony Onesto. Anthony is a human resources expert and published author who has worked across at various technology and innovation companies to scale and improve culture, talent, and human resources. Currently, Anthony is the Chief People Officer at Suzy and has experience building and establishing operations in the US and has helped several companies win workplace awards. He founded a company that produces a comic book series to encourage girls to pursue careers in STEM and entrepreneurship, and co-founded an artificially intelligent HR agent. He is a board advisor for several well-funded tech startups and has published a book called The Employee Contract: How to Find, Keep, and Elevate Gen Z Talent. We're excited to have you, Anthony.
Thank you for having me, Doug.
Our last panelist I'd like to introduce is Carrie Walecka. As the Chief People Officer, Carrie is responsible for driving Yapstone's global human capital management strategy and creating cohesiveness across their growing number of markets and employee bases. Carrie has 20 plus years of experience building and shaping the talent in a myriad of industries, including cutting edge technology and financial organizations. And the ever evolving payment industry is a great intersection for her experience. In this role, Carrie will play a trusted role as a member of the executive team, driving business and people strategy and providing people-related insights and solutions to improve organizational effectiveness at Yapstone. Thanks for being a part of the panel, Carrie.
So happy to be here.
All right, before we get started with our questions, we'd like to take a quick poll on whether your organization is using AI to help automate HR tasks today. All right, I just launched the poll. We'll leave it open for about 20 seconds or so, and then we will share the results. All right, so based on the results, it looks like we're split 50-50 in terms of using AI to help automate HR tasks. And later on in the event, we will cover a few examples and prompts on how to optimize ChatGPT. Let's dive into our first question. How has the use of AI changed the way organizations manage talent, and what adjustments have been made to ensure that technology and human-focused talent development work together seamlessly? Anthony, would you like to kick us off?
Sure, happy to. Thanks. Thanks for having me. And I can't wait to listen to everyone else. Just what an impressive group of people. I love being the dumbest person on a webinar. So anyway, so how are we thinking about AI? How is it changing the workplace? So many different things. I mean, I've seen and I've talked a lot about the application of AI across all of human resources, particularly talent, and thinking about recruiting and how we can enhance some of the recruiting capabilities. I think anywhere you think about where there's friction, and what I mean by friction is where there's a human element that we're all would love to get rid of a task, that's an opportunity where you can have AI play a really interesting part. And I think that's the first phase of what we're seeing today. Listen, AI has been around for quite a while. There's a great book out there called Race Against the Machines that was written 10 plus years ago when IBM Watson went up against Ken Jennings in Jeopardy, and Ken lost and everyone freaked out and thought the machines were going to take over. Here we are again, history repeats itself. But we're more advanced with LLMs, with ChatGPT. So now it's forefront, where AI was kind of in the backdrop and not really, it wasn't a consumer kind of application. And then OpenAI comes out with ChatGPT. So we've seen some of the simple things where, job descriptions. I want to, instead of trading job descriptions in certain places between each other, now we're going to ChatGPT to help us build job descriptions. And of course, with everything I say here, there's a plus and a minus. Brad Smith talks about AI or any tech tool as being a weapon and a force for good. But I think this is dynamically not only going to change how we operate in HR, whether it's some of the automated AI stuff or even what we're seeing with ChatGPT, but I think organizationally, in the same way that cloud computing, I remember a time where I was with a company and we had an IT room that was full of servers. That doesn't really exist anymore. All of it is in the cloud. So I think we're going to see AI impact talent in so many different ways. We can have our own podcast just on that, our own webinar just on that. But I think, and then just making sure that there's a human element to the way you're approaching AI. So don't just take whatever it spits out as fact or Bible, but become an editor, look at it. And I think that's where the human element comes in. And again, if you look at the Race Against the Machine book and you take their final analysis, wasn't the machines or the people, it's a combination of the two. And I think there's always going to be a human element into whatever we're doing in AI, and that's across all things talent. But I think this is going to be one of those watershed moments in companies and how we think about structures and workforces that we only saw very recently, 20 plus years ago with the internet.
Thanks, Anthony. Would any of the other panelists like to chime in?
I'd like to, and thank you for that, Anthony. Brilliant. I actually want to read this book now. So what I'm encountering with my HR teams is, HR people typically they're not technologists by training, typically. They do exist out there. And I think a lot of times people are overthinking it. So the way I like to reframe it is like AI is any sort of like human task you can replace with the computer. So even like creating macros in an Excel sheet, creating automatic feeds, whatever it is, like I think that's an element of AI. I think people kind of like overthink it. I asked my team to look into it at other companies. They come back with this grad school level presentation on neural networks and deep learning, machine learning. And I'm like, back up. Please just tell me what is most time consuming in your day? Like what is most repetitive, most mechanical? Let's start there. Like what can a computer replace so it frees you up for, like Anthony was saying, that more human touch, that how can you free up time to do that more transformative work? So just stop there. Like identify the task, identify the work first, and then let's see if there's a computer solution to it, an AI solution to it. Sometimes I start even saying AI because when I say AI, they're like, I don't know anything about AI. I'm not a data scientist, don't know what to do. I'm like, okay, let's start with the task, and then let's see if there is a computer way to solve for this, whether it's job descriptions, whether it's an Excel spreadsheet, something like that. So that's kind of how I reframe the conversation, because I've worked with a lot of HR people that are still scared to even like dip their toe in because it seems so overwhelming, the concept of it, if that makes sense.
It does. You see with the 50-50 split in the poll itself, right? So there's definitely a lot of hesitation on that. So absolutely agree.
The one thing I would just want to add to that is like it's low risk. There's like nothing can go wrong with you trying it. Nobody even has to know. It's like you mess around with it until you get it right, but you're not going to break the internet. You're not going to like accidentally share it to every family member and friend. It's not going on your holiday card. Like it's just a thing that you can try, like a new shade of lipstick or like whatever, in the privacy of your own home. Like go for it. It's just so easy and so risk-free.
And to that
Thanks,
point,
everyone.
this
Go ahead. Go ahead,
sorry,
Oren.
I always have something to say. I'm sorry. This is the perfect chance to disabuse a lot of people of this notion that HR is not technology forward.
Yes.
This is a perfect time
Yep.
to take the reins and show leadership that HR is data-driven. We are sophisticated. We are problem solvers. We're evidence-based. And take this bull by the horns and just start committees, start bringing in leadership, start bringing in employees. Like just take the momentum, take the initiative, and show people the power of HR.
Thanks, everyone. Next, we're going to highlight the benefits in the workplace. How are companies using AI tools like ChatGPT to improve their job descriptions and make them more engaging for today's workforce? Heather, I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on this.
Yeah, and I would even expand that a little bit. So Anthony talked a little bit about job descriptions or taking repeatable tasks that we do. And, I think about this as, I think two ways. How does this improve the way that we do our work? But also, how do we take this and improve the outcomes of our organization? I firmly believe this is HR's moment to step up, right? We are a function that is primed for disruption in this space. And we can either ignore it or we can lean into it really fast, right? So as I think about this and I talk with teams, I find there's a ton of fear, right? And that fear is usually because of lack of education, unknown of the risk, right? But as we said, just kind of, if you lean in a bit, what might you be able to do? We've done it for job descriptions. I've also done it, I'm sure many of us have been in those meetings where you're like, let's look at our mission and vision. And you end up with 100 sticky notes, right? And then you've got to amalgamate all that back together. And that is a language processing activity that we do as humans that machines can do so much faster. And so this can expedite some of those tasks that we do on a regular basis. We just have to think about a new way of doing it. Now, of course, the elephant in the room is the fear of our HR teammates that, we work with very private data. How do we take some of the private data we work with and what can we put out there in ChatGPT and what becomes part of some other data source? A lot of companies are looking into, how do you create private components of this? And this is something we're doing at Global Logic. When you have those private data sources and you apply the ChatGPT type of the language models on top of it, you can use this for things like looking through your policies. How do you change the access level of information in your company for people that you add a layer of extreme, improve that experience, right? So instead of looking at our repeatable task, I am challenging my teams to say, where do we have areas where they're just fumbly from an employee experience standpoint? Where can we take this application and improve that? And that's generally in your main pain points across the board, right? Onboarding. What are those moments that matter? Supervisor having a situation where an employee comes to them and say, what do I do with my career next, right? We have tons of information. How do we boil that down and help get through that? What's my market data on my person? Am I paying them right? Are they in the right job, right? Again, points of need that actually are processing mass amounts of data in a language type way. We can apply this technology in those spaces.
Any
additional context to add from the panel?
Oh, so much. I just want to tackle something really head on. If you're not looking into AI, you're going to be I don't want to scare folks, but I'm going to scare you right now. You're going to be way behind. Like this is, we've seen technological evolutions like the internet. Can you imagine not being on the internet right now? And there's a segment of folks that probably aren't, and that's okay. But if you're thinking about advancing in your career in HR, your company, I think, I think Heather said it, or maybe it was Carrie, about this is not just impacting us, it's impacting our organizations. You got to get involved here, and it is super easy. I'll give you a couple of examples, and I'm loving what I'm seeing so far. And I'm an optimist, so I want to be very clear on that. But I also read not only Race Against Machines, but Weapons of Math Destruction by Kathy O'Neill, which gives you a cautionary tale of how these tools can be used for nefarious reasons. But I'm taking an optimist view today, and I do that constantly, is this idea, like, we have so much information. By the way, if you remember intranets that no one would go to, think about an intranet where you can have a chat experience and it can answer questions for employees. How many questions on a daily basis do you get from employees that's almost the same exact question from other employees that you just answered? Like it's just like, if you overlay a chat experience, and we're using Atlassian Intelligence over our Confluence pages, it can now answer questions. So we could literally, and then we're just getting started with this, I'm estimating 50% of the time that we're spending. And by the way, I think answering those questions accurately and quickly is a great experience. I call it front of stage, back of stage. I use it as a theater reference. Back of stage, it's now an AI bot that's answering the question, not my team. And I'm in a startup, so we're lean and mean. So it just a fundamentally 101, you can use it for that specific purpose, and with all the guidelines around your data and security, because it's Atlassian, it's an enterprise tool. Not that I'm perpetuating Atlassian by any means, but there's so many simple things that you can do to bring AI, and the ways that ChatGPT or any of these solutions can really benefit are simple question and answer type of solutions. Now you could get super sophisticated. I talked to someone that was automating some recruiting tasks, like the ability to go out and scrape profiles and do all other things with autonomous agents. That's version 2 or 3. What I'm saying today is just look at the basics, and there's really a lot of things you can see across your board. All those tasks that you're doing that are very manual, that will create a better experience. That's version 1, and I think it's very attainable right now with the tools that are out there. Hopefully I didn't scare you.
Great, thanks, Anthony. Let's move on to our next question. How can companies effectively use technology to improve HR processes while still maintaining human involvement in areas such as employee engagement and relations? Let's start with your response, Heather.
Sure. I think this starts with employee-centered design, right? So if we think about this, sometimes what we think about solving are what are repeatable tasks. And I think that's good from an operations perspective. However, I think we're at risk to think, how do we may dehumanize the function, and we never want to do that. We want to make sure we keep the human in this function. Many of us, if you work for a services company, this is even incredibly more important, right? You've got people as the core of your business. And even if you're at a product company, same thing, right? We need those humans to get the products out the door. So keeping in mind, if we do that, I like to think with human-centered design first. So what does that look like, right? So I talked a little bit about what are those pain points across your process. There are common pain points across the process. It is always hard to start in a new company. It is always hard to transition between roles. It is always hard when an employee comes to you and says, what do I do next? I'm not happy, etc. Right? But all of us will also have pain points within our own companies that are different and personalized. So really looking at engagement scores, really looking at What are people saying about your company on those external sites like Glassdoor and other components? Going in and having conversations with your people to understand the life on the ground is where I start. From there, right, we think about then how we can layer in some solutions that may be GenAI, correlated. But to me, starting with what are those human points of experience that we can improve, right? Because they may not even exist in our current operations today. I think we're also at a point where, particularly for small companies, we're able to really take the experience on a roller coaster ride with what the capabilities of GenAI are, right? We can now do things like layering on a chatbot on top of a Confluence, right? That really, or giving access, supervisors access to more, what people tend to do after this role, right? Looking at more historical stuff that was only really accessible to very mature HRIS systems. So if your company is not at a stage where you can invest in that type of system, you actually can still get some of those incredible outcomes around employee experience applying GenAI here. So to me, this is an uplift point for a small company over a large company, right? Where you have more agility, more nimbleness to move inside your systems, where you have a smaller protected version of what a policy, a process, a way, a step, a data point to do, and layering over these language models on top of that can get you, from point A to point Z much quicker than you could have done with much more minimal investment.
Great, thanks, Heather. It looks like we've had a couple of questions come in from the audience. The first one that we'd like to address is, what are the basics that you started with using ChatGPT?
I think if you want, I can skip ahead a little bit in what we had planned for our program and even show some things. Because is that okay with you, Oren? Well, not Oren, Douglas. Everyone okay with that?
Let's do it.
Yeah, no,
okay.
Not at all.
Okay, cool. So basically what I would say is AI has made me so much more efficient, and that it gets me like 80% of the way there on projects that used to take up a lot of time. As I'm sure everybody here either knows or experiences, HR teams are typically under-resourced, and this is a way to like just lean in and make tech your friend, and you can spend time on the things you want to do. So as an HR leader, I think about the things I have to do and then the things I get to do. And the things I have to do is where I really lean on AI. And AI, I think in its simplest form, like to me anyway, and this could definitely be wrong. I am not the smartest person in the room, Anthony, so I'm winning that award here. But I think of it as doing something by machines that would be considered like intelligent by a person. So it's vast and wide, but the easiest way I think, and I'm so glad somebody asked this because this is the area where I do shine, is ChatGPT. It's an awesome place to dip your toe into the AI waters. So I'll show you a couple prompts and let me screen share, and anyone can feel amazing just by doing some of these things. And maybe that person that says like, can you see my screen? But can you see my screen?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm on the free model. So this doesn't even cost anything. If you want to be extra, you can certainly be fabulous and amazing and pay for it. But and it will save all of your chats. I actually cleaned all of mine up because there's so many things in there about like 10-day itineraries for my 10-year-old daughter and I in Paris. There's like everything going on. My whole personal life is like in ChatGPT now. But this was a prompt I actually was doing earlier on. I have an individual contributor on our software engineering team that does not want to be a manager, but is looking to me to create some type of a development plan, not a like performance improvement, but just how do I get better? How do I raise my game? And I thought, oh, this is so easy. So I just literally typed in, please create a development plan for a senior engineer who wants to further develop her career, but on the individual contributor track and not become a manager of people. And it listed out all kinds of goals for her. And it's not perfect, but it will get me, it's getting me started on what I can offer her. And granted, she could have done this too if she had thought of it, but instead they're going to make me look like an HR coaching genius. And I think, so what I do often is ask a question to ChatGPT the way I would ask any of my peers or anyone in my organization. And I've taught my boss this because he uses it like the internet and it doesn't work. So he would put in like, I need to put, if the situation was I need to put a junior level HR person on a performance plan because she's missing deadlines, she's incorrectly inputting data because she's not using AI, and all these other things, whatever it might be, he would go to the internet and just say, like, I need a performance improvement plan, et cetera, et cetera. And it would give you a template. It wouldn't actually give you a plan for said employee. And then that plan is not actually perfect to your employee, but it's a place to start. So I'll show you what I mean. Please help me create a performance improvement. Even if I spell it wrong, it's still going to get it there. So it's that smart. For a junior, let's say accountant, who is not hitting deadlines, does not often analyze her own work, and needs more time spent on details and project planning. It takes like less than 30 seconds to spit out something that's really going to help you here. Shows you the performance issues of deadline management, self-analysis, attention to detail and project planning, gives some expectations that are like pretty basic, some action steps, how often you should be reviewing. I mean, you could literally lift and shift this into a conversation so quickly. And not that any of us as true HR professionals would do that, but you could if you wanted to. And it's continuing to prompt out and actually like create a real form where the employee is signing it, et cetera. And then oftentimes, if it's not really what you want, you could even go back and just say, please take the above and make it more lengthy or provide more detail. Or sometimes, I think this is maybe another common thing people are thinking about now is like making sure all of your employees are being mindful about holiday time off. And you have to draft that lovely communication that's super friendly, super nice, and saying like, put your time in and make sure your work is covered without being like the police. No one wants the HR to be the police or the referee with the whistle. We're supposed to be the coach and the support. So you could say, please draft a message to all staff to remind them to put their time off for the holidays into Bamboo HR. That's what you guys use, or whoever, whatever you use, and be mindful of getting their work covered while they are out. And then it sends this lovely message. As the holiday season is approaching, we want to ensure a smooth and organized transition for everyone to deserve their well-timed off. And it like, just makes everything I'm saying actually verbally here and what I poorly just typed far more eloquent than what's actually happening here. And then you can go back and you can revise it, you can update it, but instead of having those things on your to-do list that you just don't want to get to because they're not important, they don't feel meaningful, but they actually are important, and then they actually are meaningful. This is how you can get half of your stuff done, and then it takes you maybe 7 minutes to edit it versus 20 minutes to think about it, 5 minutes to take a break because something more exciting just popped up in your Slack channel, and then you forgot all about it and 2 days have gone by and nobody's gotten a message about time off. So ultimately, that's what it looks like. So I can't see anything other than my own screen here, but so I don't know if anyone has any suggestions of other things they want to have me take a whirl at here, but or if this is sufficient, I'll just stop screen sharing, but it's so easy.
Really appreciate you running through those examples, Carrie. And to the audience, if there is a prompt or question that you'd like to have Carrie run through live on our event today, feel free to drop it into the Q&A or the chat itself, and we're happy to run through that. We did have another question come in from the audience. What kind of training does your HR staff need to effectively use and manage ChatGPT?
I feel like that's it. The one thing I will say is it's not to replace anything that we do. It's just to get us started. It's similar to, asking a friend, or I belong to a lot of different networks where I'll say, hey, does anybody have a policy on parental leave in the UK, for example, right? This is the same thing. It's just getting you started. And then you take that parental leave from your friend or from ChatGPT, and then you make it your own and you customize it for your organization. So I think as long as you're always checking to make sure it's factual, like ChatGPT is behind, so the laws aren't exactly accurate, or there could be anything could be off. But so just like you would if you got it from any other resource, you just have to validate that it's correct and that it works for your organization. But otherwise, I mean, I don't know. I work in a tech forward environment, so like we support really just trying everything and trying to be early adopters.
I was just going to say, I think there's some guide rules around like what to put into the prompts, right? So you don't want to put any sensitive or confidential information into the prompt, because that becomes part of the education of the actual system, right? So that's knowing things like that, knowing that it can be wrong, right? So it's only as good as the information it's been given as an engine. So so you have to layer in that component. But there are fantastic publicly available learning bits that cover exactly these pieces, right? But there are some high level awareness pieces that we all need to know as we go into it. Don't lean legalities on it. Don't put confidential information out there, and also learning how to prompt. I think you kind of, in the example, you kind of acted like it was your assistant. And I think that's the change model, right? We've all been taught how to search Google, right? And how to engineer what we type in a Google search. This is different. Knowing how to prompt and then refine your prompt is a skill as well. So I think those are the two components of quote unquote training.
I would agree with that. I even say please and thank you, like when I'm talking to it. And I think like part of that is, well, like I'm training AI to also be like a really polite computer program.
Yeah, there was a research I think just published that if you give it rewards, it actually performs better. So it's interesting to hear that. Just to add to what Heather said, there's a ton of open source. There's a newsletter, Superhuman, which talks a lot about generative AI. There's a lot, Google open sources a lot of this information if you're looking for training. I think the beauty of this, what I love about why OpenAI has changed the game with AI is because it's a chat interface. And I think that's the most common interface I think all of us know how to interact with. And I think that was the game changer in terms of why this technology went from 0 to 100 million users in such a short period of time. So it is simple, right? It's getting in there. And most of what you're going to learn is just going into the tool and playing with it, getting an output that you're like, what the heck is this? And then refining some of that output. But there's definitely a lot of open source. I wouldn't go too deep initially because you could get lost. And I think Oren may have said it, in the neural network kind of like, that's important. You want to know, but if you really want to geek out on that stuff, sure. But for the basics in terms of usage, there's a lot of open source. Like I said, Superhuman is a newsletter. I forget there's another newsletter that I track with. And there's a bunch of players in this. TikTok has a bunch of influencers that talk about the impact of AI. They also have like prompt libraries that you can use. I think there's Charter is in the HR space has one. I forget what the other, Troop HR, I think does some of this stuff too. So again, if you're looking for, it's definitely out there and you can find it.
Thanks, everyone. We had another question come in from the audience. What's been a takeaway with updating job descriptions using ChatGPT? How have you been able to narrow in on the person you're looking to hire? Oren, do you want to kick us off with your response?
Yeah, I guess with a caveat, I'm not sure what ChatGPT is. I haven't updated technology since Tamagotchis. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. So I think what I experience with managers a lot of times is there's two approaches. You ask them to come up with a job description and then they drag their feet forever because they don't even know where to start. Or you pull something offline and hope it's similar to what they're thinking of, and then you start there, right? Those are probably the two approaches most of us have taken, or we try to write it ourselves from an HR perspective and we kind of land wherever. So I think what's good with ChatGPT is it will get us like 80% there. ChatGPT is not going to replace human judgment here because each organization is unique. A software engineer will do very similar things across all companies, but your company might have special things that the manager is going to put on there. So ChatGPT is going to save us a lot of time. It's going to get the ball rolling, so you don't have to wait on managers to provide you something, or you might pull something randomly offline. So ChatGPT will get us 80% there. And what I have found is it will spark a lot of conversation because ChatGPT sort of amalgamates software engineer from across the universe. So you get a lot of things that managers in your organization haven't even thought of. So you're already thinking outside the box. You've already saved so much time. You've already taken that one step in that journey of 1,000 miles. And so you can take all that time you saved and then put it into the conversation with the manager and work on fine tuning what it is about this ChatGPT job description is right, wrong, needs a little fine tuning, little fiddling, and then it just saves you so much time and you get there a lot faster, I guess is what I'm saying. So I recommend you continue using ChatGPT for job descriptions, but it's not the end all. Like the other panelists have been saying, human judgment is key here, and you're going to have those conversations with management.
Great, thanks, Oren. We had another question come in from the audience. I'd like to know the source of my data. Is there a way to see where it is pulling from? If I ask for a job description, can I see that it referenced 4,000 records in the Bay Area, for example?
I don't know. I don't think any of these like reveal their algorithm or methodology. I haven't seen that. I don't know if any other panels have seen that. I think it's proprietary in nature, so they may not share it.
No, but you could hone that in with your prompts.
Yeah.
Right. So if you were looking for a specific area, if you were looking for a specific, so you could, instead of getting the data for where it's coming from, you can continue to hone and hone and hone to get exactly what you're seeking.
So if you wanted to, like, let's say I'm reading into this question, I have no idea if this is where it's coming from, but let's say you are looking to make a job description and you're in the Bay Area and you want to make sure that you're not making a job description from a competitor that's close by in the Bay Area. So your candidates wouldn't say, oh, that looks just like that other job I applied to. You could say maybe like using job descriptions based in New York City. Here's the role that I'm looking for. And that way you're not running the risk of literally getting busted by stealing some other company's job description, basically. But I don't think that would ever happen because it's all coming in from so many different resources. Or you could say, make one tailored to companies that are based in the Bay Area if you're looking for it to have like similar attributes or similar selling points, maybe, or something like that. I guess it depends on why you care and what are you trying to get to or avoid.
Yeah, and it looks like someone did comment, you can ask ChatGPT what the source was that was used, and it will tell you most of the time.
Yeah.
Another question we want to address from the audience, this individual shared, I use GenAI every day. I'm curious if the panelists use GenAI to aggregate or analyze quantitative data in spreadsheets.
Yes. It's one of my favorite features of ChatGPT. They're also in the GPT section. I'm going to get a little bit, like, call this 2.0 advanced. There's a data analyzer that they open source from OpenAI where you can throw, this is the area, and I think Heather talked about this, where you want to be really careful of what you put in here because a lot of the data that you're probably is proprietary to your company. So I want to caution you with that. Simple example of doing something like this. So Zoom decided to bring everyone back into the office. So every CEO is like, if they're bringing people back in, why aren't we bringing people back in? So I wanted to anticipate the question and explain to our CEO that we're no longer in New York. We're distributed across the nation. Like, where would you like to bring people in? So I pulled down zip codes, I took away all employee names, and I said, give me an analysis of where our zip codes are, how far are they away from our office, and it gave me really great data. This is a simple example. You can also combine spreadsheets, and you used to have to do VLOOKUPs. Now you throw spreadsheets in and say, hey, I want to combine these two, add these columns. Sometimes it comes up with an error, I want to be clear, but sometimes it does come up with the actual file you could download, and now it's both of these. So these are two simple examples, but you can throw up in there into ChatGPT in the data, and you have to have the code generator or a code interpreter. So you do have to, I think this is a premium charge, but you could throw it up there and say, analyze this data for me, and it will go through the steps of looking at the columns. What's the data? And then you could say, provide me some insights. What's the most interesting piece of insight here? It's literally like having an analyst, which I can't afford in my department, in a small little HR startup department. It's like having an analyst on my team now, and it provides me so much information. So yes, absolutely. It's one of my really favorite examples of how to use ChatGPT in this regard. This data analytics piece is going to be critical.
I used it similarly, but for non-numerical data, where we took a survey, and it wasn't like a typical engagement survey using a tool. We used good old-fashioned Google Forms, and with a lot of the qualitative answers, there was so much amazing content. So I just dumped it all in to a prompt saying, synthesize this for me, pull the key points. And then, like, bam, I had amazing slides for my deck. I had everything. I mean, it was so simple, and it was so smart. It was it broke down into like headings and then stub bullets and everything. It was fantastic for synthesizing non-qualitative qualitative information as well.
Great use case. And it provides charts too. If you prompt it for a chart, it'll give you a chart. They're not always the most pretty charts, but they're useful. They're functional.
So in both of those examples, those are moments, I think, in our jobs where we go, I don't want to do this. Like, it's like, this is going to be like not the best use of my time. Not that it's not interesting. And there are also ones that if you had a slew of clerks or analysts or so, you would kind of explain it to them and it'd come back to you a couple of days later. And so you got this in hours, or, but the time you could from start to bottom. And that's what I think it's more on terms of cost, it's speed.
100%. And so it's speed. And then, like, for me, it frees me up to do the stuff I want to do. So about that, like, I really care about that data and that feedback, but I'm more interested in, because I actually am a human and I work at this company and I experience this company, I know what that means to where I work. I know how that translates to Yapstone. Like, I couldn't say to ChatGPT, how does that fit into the last 6 months of an employee experience here at Yapstone? But that allows me to just get that information quickly, pop together a bunch of slides, and then myself actually think about, how do I want to tell the story? What does it matter? And take that data and actually make it work for us. And that's like the fun part, is for me, not every HR person, but for connecting the dots for the human experience to drive the goals of the organization. But ChatGPT is never going to know what it's like to be an employee at my company. So I also have jobs for me, but I have like my own secret best friend here that's a robot.
And I think it's also like it advances your capabilities. So I'm the kid who fell asleep in stats class in high school. I don't have an economic or a legal degree, which is why I want to hear more from Oren. But I, like, I throw it in there, and it, like, you ask it quite, like, it actually acts like an analyst. And so for me, it's just so powerful where I want to be numbers driven. I think HR people, how does this, and then you can add in, like, how would this impact revenue, or how would this impact the business metrics? And it really, like, I have a chief of staff now that absolutely helps me with these things. So it extend, and listen, we all have a imposter syndrome. It's okay. Like, I'm not great at math. I don't know stats, but I have a tool now that gets me the output in the story, and then I can tell the story pretty well. But as long as I have that analyst with me, and that's really, like, don't be afraid of these things. And I said this, I think, in our warm-ups or maybe another session, like, you don't have to give credit to it. Like, we don't credit our MacBooks for all the work we do. Like, it's a tool. It's okay to use it. Don't be embarrassed, and you don't have to say, oh, this was created by ChatGPT. Here's my story. So just don't be afraid of it.
Thanks, everyone. We're going to address another question that came in from the audience. Do you have any team members who weren't on board with AI and now have turned the page and are seeing the benefits of AI and using ChatGPT?
I do. And I think it's more around, it wasn't they weren't on board. I think it's fearful from job, like, is this another cost cutting component, right? But when you see it actually uplifts the overall experience, it's pretty, easy to make the case. But I haven't had any of them been fearful. I think it's just, are we now going to be able to reduce our headcount and shared services by 20% because they don't have to answer the questions? No, I think it helps us expedite growth. So I think that's more the case I've seen.
Yeah, I've seen folks on my team. I think so we saw this when we were, I would do a task analysis and understand what the task is and, does a human need to do it? I mean, years ago, it used to be, do we outsource this? Do we nearshore or offshore this, right? So we fluctuate through these things, and that's always going to be a part of business. So I wouldn't, I never come into these things saying this is never going to happen. Yeah, if we automate some of this and now you have 50% more time, you should be focusing on strategic efforts. But in fact, that's probably going to limit the amount of hires I make in the future because I could scale now with less people. So there is I call it the M&M theory. You got to call these things out. There is part of the fear of like, if I use this, I'm going to lose my job. I wouldn't say that, yes, you would, but I would also say, listen, this is going to help us become more strategic, right? We all want to be, and that's been the storyline for a while, especially with outsourcing things. But yes, I think there's also an element, particularly in HR or anywhere really, where people love doing these things. Like people really love doing these tactical things and are really comfortable in the tactics. And those are the folks that are going to be most fearful because a lot of those tactics are going to be automated. So you have to understand also the person involved. And I think there was an individual that I was working with that was like, didn't really, but then when I said, hey, if she was complaining about something, I said, what if we automate that? And eyes lit up. She's like, because she hated like doing that thing. So I think it's going to be situational, but yeah, there's definitely people that push back on these things in fear of getting replaced, or again, being asked to do something strategic. They might not have the capability. They're a better systems thinker. And then there's a place for them, like help me build this automation versus do it, if that makes sense.
All right, we want to move on to our next question. What should organizations keep in mind when building AI solutions for HR to ensure successful implementation and user acceptance? I think we covered this briefly, but Oren, can you share your approach?
Yeah, I think I forgot who mentioned this, but first and foremost, like get your data correct, like garbage in, garbage out. So I think a lot of times we're not putting in that investment up front to make sure that the data is clean. And if it's not clean, it's not in the right field, it's not where you need it to be. Your model, your AI, it's just not going to give you what you want. So I think that's first. Second is you really have to manage the messaging. Because like some of the other panelists have mentioned that people have fear around this. It's valid. We experienced a lot of layoffs around the world this year. Several sectors have sort of been disrupted. So there's a real fear people are feeling around them being replaced. Like Anthony was mentioning about like that outsource. In the past, we would outsource things. So that was the previous fear that we're going to outsource everybody's jobs to a lower paying country. And now the fear is we're going to outsource people's job to a machine. So I think being deliberate around the messaging is what I would suggest preparing an organization, making sure that it's just, I see a lot of organizations just kind of like letting things play out. And like I said before, take the bull by the horns, meet with your leadership, meet with champions for this within the organization, come up with an organizational strategy to guide you. Because what happens is when you don't have conversations around this, there's gaps in the information, there's gaps in the narrative, and people are going to fill those gaps in the narrative with what they're feeling right now. And people are feeling a lot of anxiety. So to quote the UK subway system, mind the gap. So when there's gaps in information around this narrative, you need to be deliberate about filling them in. So if you know people are going to be anxious about it, you need to have a strategic approach. You need to be transparent. You need to have lots of conversations around it. Even task people with it. I've seen organizations that part of their performance review, employees have to talk about how they're going to leverage AI to improve their job in the new year. So you can take all sorts of approaches to this to make sure that you control the narrative, that you have a strategic and leadership-based approach around this, that people see you paying attention to their needs, that you're addressing them, you're having lots of conversations around them. And I think if we do those things, the path will reveal itself. Every organization is going to have a different path around this. But the one thing I do not suggest is don't let it happen organically, because what's going to happen is all of this fear and anxiety that's in the marketplace is going to bleed into that internal narrative that your organization is building. And that's not what you want. AI is a tool to make our jobs more powerful, more effective, more productive. It's not here to replace anyone. I hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Oren. And I have a follow-up question. What new trends do you expect to see from AI and HR in the future? And how can organizations prepare themselves to effectively use these trends for talent acquisition, development, and retention?
That's a good question. I think firstly, I'm like, in preparation for the robot apocalypse, be kind to your Roomba. Let me just get that out there. We don't know how this is going to play out. No, I think what's going to happen is we're going to be in this space where AI is probably going to plateau for a bit while we play around with what's available, while we improve like what's available. We're not going to see this magic, super realistic, super intelligent tool pop out for a while. So we have this horizon where we can play around comfortably. Like some people on the panels have said, there's low risk to this. So I think what's coming is lots of automation, figuring out ways to automate it. There's tools like Zapier, where if somebody on your team can learn some basic Python, you can automate tons of tasks. You can connect all these different pieces, because as you know, HRIS is like, they don't do everything. So you end up with like this Frankenstein of things to manage your applicant tracking, and something for performance and something for data storage. So I think Zapier or tools like that, learning how to have them feed into each other and interact with each other is important. And what I'm really excited about is the ability to analyze large data sets. And this is important because, like I said before, most HR people are not technologists, they're not statisticians, they don't typically come from math. So it can be overwhelming to have this huge data set. Every single data point you collect on anybody, from the EEOC data about ethnicity to zip code to performance review, every single point of that is another coin in your treasure chest. So these tools are going to allow us to detect subtle nuances in the data. We can tell what is the best day to post a position. We can tell how like ENPS, like employee engagement scores, are going to impact performance outcomes. We can, most importantly, I think, I guess not most importantly, but the AI tool can help us detect ethical and discriminatory ways in the way that we operate that weren't apparent before. And that's something very important, because building these models, if you're not a data analytics person, sometimes when you use AI, you're not aware of the bias that's built into the model. And in something that I think is going to be coming forefront, it's typically used in like the financial sector. It's model risk management. It's around making sure that your models are built well, the parameters are built well, and it's giving the data the output that you want, but also making sure that it's not behaving in a discriminatory fashion. And we can see this, we see this all the time in AI models built for different things, and it could impact like the way you use AI in like recruiting and sourcing. We see that these models can sometimes spit out, I guess, discriminatory, racist data, not because the model is built wrong, but because it's scrubbing from an environment that has those characteristics. So if you understand a little more, you don't have to be an expert in these things, but if you understand how they work, you keep informed about the developments in ethics and model management, you can start asking the right questions that will help you know if what's going on is what you want to be going on, if that makes sense. Sorry, this is hard to explain, but did that answer the question?
It did. Thanks, Oren. And as we conclude, are there any closing thoughts from the panel to share with the audience today?
Yeah, I just I think to wrap and add up to Oren's point, like I think in terms of what will happen, trend in the future, we have customers, right? Our people in our organizations are our customers. And there is a consumer expectation that is going to change as more people engage and interact with this, right? So our function's not always known for being fast and nimble and quick and innovative, right? And so I think those expectations are going to come on us, whether or not, we want them to be there. So as we play and experiment with it, and as the changing consumer expectations are also going to be pushing the timeline. So if you think about how questions get answered, soon the consumer is going to think there's a better way to do this. Why aren't we doing that? Right. So I think I would challenge all of us to also, this is not happening in a bubble. This is touching every experience in our life. Therefore, there are changing consumer expectations. We have those consumers, and that should put some pressure on our timelines.
Great. Thanks,
that.
Heather.
What I would just suggest to folks as a future looking thing is just ask what if. Start every question with what if, and then put the blank in there. What if we were able to automate this? What if, we're going to have smaller companies because AI is definitely going to impact jobs, and it's going to create jobs, but it's going to impact jobs. What if we had a smaller company? What if I had data that I could look across all these different things? What can I potentially do? What if I can automate some of the just ask what if, and then write down what you put down after that, and just go through that practice. Just take a day and go and take a journal. What if, and then start seeing what the possibilities are. And I will say with certainty, over the next year or two, a lot of your what ifs will be crossed off, particularly pertaining to AI, autonomous agents, things like that. So ask yourself, what if?
Great. Thanks, Heather. Thanks, Anthony. I'd like to give a very special thank you to our panelists for sharing their insights and experiences today throughout our discussion. Feel free to scan their QR code to connect with them on LinkedIn. And don't forget to check out our YouTube channel for past events, including the Halo series, where we feature thought leaders in a one-on-one setting as we discuss what's keeping them up at night. And thank you, everyone, for joining. Please keep an eye out for the survey request early next week. We will have a version uploaded to YouTube early next week, and we look forward to seeing you at our next event. I hope everyone has a great weekend and happy holidays.